Hey everyone, I just wanted to welcome you to the Logos Mentality. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss purpose and meaning. That's what Logos Mentality is all about. It's a meaning mentality. It's living a life that has meaning. Each and every day we got a purpose. We've got a meaning for our life. And it's a choice each and every day. Today, the topic that we're going to be discussing is decisions. And sometimes it takes discipline to make decisions. And so we're going to be really talking about both topics. I got some great examples, some great excerpts from a few articles that I've read this week. Then we're going to cap it off with a great story from the Bible, from the book of Ruth. It's a great story. Start you off with a couple of quotes here. Andy Andrews says, "You can make yourself do something you don't want to do for the sake of something you really want to get." That's his definition of discipline. Michael Hyatt talks about discipline when he talks about mission or vision. He says, "Can you make yourself persevere through something because the vision is vivid and compelling and the future is something you want so badly that you can't take it?" That when so many things want to come against your mission, your vision, your purpose, do you have the discipline to say, that vision, that purpose, that meaning for my life is more powerful than whatever's coming against me? And I make the decision to go forward. Joyce Meyer talks about, she says, you can have the pain of discipline today or the regret of tomorrow. Oh my goodness. That speaks to me. I have a lot of regret for actions that I wish I would not have done, but then also have regret for actions that I wish I would have done, that I wish I would have stepped up, that I wish I wouldn't have wasted a day or a week or a month or a decade. I wish I would have done these actions sooner. But all I can live with is where I'm at right now and continue to make the decision today to not make those wrong decisions again. I've had a really enjoyable time discussing it and reading through a few of Michael Youssef's articles. He's got such a vast wisdom and knowledge. And I'm going to read you just a brief portion of an excerpt from his article called "Commit to Doing God's Will." He says, "One of the identifying characteristics of our postmodern, post-Christian culture is indecision. Many people today refuse to accept that life is made up of either or decisions. Today's generation wants to keep all options open. They consider an all-inclusive tolerance to be a virtue, and they often reject the notion that some actions, attitudes, or beliefs deserves to be excluded. The word decision comes from the Latin decidere, which means to cut off, from de and cater, to cut. Once you make a decision to go in one direction, you cut off all other possibilities to go in the opposite direction. If you decide to marry this person, you cut off the option to marrying anybody else. If you decide to go to a Chinese restaurant for dinner, you cut off the option of having pizza. I know that you guys are. I've hounded that home and you can see that is. But we must look at our decisions each and every day. So I have a purpose. I have a meaning for my life. That's the first step, is understanding I have that. Step number 2 is I'm making the decision to walk it out. And there's not an if, and there's not a, if the situation's right, I'm gonna walk it out. If all the opportunities come my way today, you know what, I'm gonna walk it out. If I have enough money, if my resources, if everything is going my way, then I'll make the decision. Nope. Unfortunately, my friends, the decision has to be made long before then. And oftentimes, none of those things are going to go right. Oftentimes, it's our faith of stepping out before those things that causes some of these dominoes to begin falling our way. But even when they don't, because friends, they won't, a lot of times, they won't fall your way. You have to have the decision placed of, this is the direction I'm going today. I'm choosing to walk out my purpose before situations come up and try to take my purpose away. Who would they try to knock me down? I've made my decision this is the direction that I'm going. To a couple of scriptures
So
I
this is
wanted
going
to
to
really
bounce us over.
take a look at. So there's one in Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." There is a pattern to this world. A lot of it looks like a pattern of complacency or apathy, and as Michael Youssef is talking about, indecision. And so we have to choose each day to not live in the pattern of complacency or apathy or indecision. We have to choose the pattern of decision. As I've made my decision to walk for Christ, I've made my decision to be a light, I've made my decision to be a vision carrier, not only for Christ, but what Christ has done for me. And so we have that choice. And so this is where we're going to jump into the book of Ruth. We're going to read a little bit from chapter 1. If you guys don't know this story, it's only got 4 chapters, and so it's a very quick read. It's right after Judges, so it's a little bit halfway through kind of the Old Testament area, right before Psalms and Proverbs, if you need that help. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory real quick before we're going to jump into it. So there was a woman named Naomi. She was married to a gentleman named Elimelech. Okay, she had 2 sons. Okay, there was a famine in the land, and so she had to leave the city of Bethlehem, and she had to head over to the land of Moab. Moab was not very nice. They were consistently coming up and raiding the Israelites, and so this would not have been their first choice. The situation must have been dire that caused them to make this choice to leave. Right, so they're on their way. As they're on their way, they're heading out. We're going to pick up here in verse 3. So in verse 3, it says, "Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with just her 2 sons. They took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. So they lived in Moab for 10 years during this famine. It's quite a commitment. Then both Mahalon and Chilion also died. That's Naomi's sons. They died. And the woman was bereft of her 2 children and her husband. Then she arose, then being Naomi, arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the land of Moab. For she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she departed from that place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go and return, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, but we will surely go with you, you and your people." Naomi said, "Return, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my wombs that may be your husbands? Return, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I said I have hope, I should even have a husband tonight and bear sons. Would you therefore wait until they are grown? Would you there refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it's far harder for me than for you. So go, for the Lord has dealt strongly against me." So I know it says that Naomi, they're on their way, and then Naomi tells them. So they get a little backstory, and it postulates that there would have been a portion in the journey where Naomi understood that had she waited too much longer, then the girls, Orpah and Ruth, would have been committed to making the full journey. So she couldn't go too far to where they would make the full journey, but she had to go far enough to where they knew that there was a decision to be made. So she didn't tell them before they left, because then she would say, "No, of course we're going to go with you. Of course, we're not going to let you walk that whole way all by yourself." But she had to take them far enough to make the decision more difficult. And that's what we're going to jump into next. Verse 14, it says, "Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her." So Orpah left at this point. Orpah saw the decision. She knew, if I go any further, I'm committed to Naomi. I don't think I can make the journey back on my own. And if I do, it's probably not going to end as well. So here I can cut my losses and I can just go back, right? And that's what Naomi was counting on, right? And behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people. Or this is Naomi speaking to Ruth. Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I die. There I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. That's quite a commitment. That is quite a commitment, quite a decision to be. Did you see what else she committed to? She didn't just commit to finishing the journey. No, she said, where you go, I'll go. I'll finish a journey with you, but I'm not just going to meet you there. Where you stay, I'll stay. Means I'm not leaving you. Means I'm a part of you. Means we're family. Your people will be my people. So now I'm not just coming and I'm going to do my own thing, but I'm going to join in. I'm going to be a part of your tribe. And your God, my God. And this is one of the ones we got to talk about. So it's been 10 years. And think of the state of mind that Naomi's in. Naomi's lost her husband. She's lost her 2 sons. She's been out of her homeland, away from all her friends, all her family, away from where she grew up, probably away from their land, their home that they owned for a decade. And we're going to see here shortly a little bit more of Naomi's state of mind, but she wasn't talking very good about God. She didn't have a whole lot of nice things to say. And Ruth, who had been with Naomi for 10 years now, hasn't seen, or at least we're not accounted for, hasn't seen any positive attributes of God. She's seen her husband die, Naomi's husband die, then seen Naomi's 2 sons die, Orpah and Ruth's husbands, and then now they're on their way back. And here you have Naomi, who has no hope, and is telling her. That is when Ruth is making this commitment to, I'm going to serve your God. I don't even know what that thought process was like. Whenever you are at your lowest, Naomi, whenever you have zero hope, whenever the only hope that you have in going back is that you heard a word from the Moabites. You didn't even hear it from the people of Bethlehem. And yet Ruth doubles down and commits and makes a decision. Verse 19 says, so they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, all the city was stirred. And the women said, is this Naomi? And Naomi stops him. She says, do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, which means Mara means bitter. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. So that's verse 20 and 21. She tells him, call me bitter because I am bitter. The Lord has judged bitterly towards me, which means I was bitter whenever I told Ruth and Orpah to leave. I was bitter on the journey over. I was bitter for the past decade because I saw all this as God doing it against me. I know I've been there. And that's when Ruth makes the decision to say, you know what? If I got to be called bitter too, I'm not leaving you. If I got to be a part of a God who doesn't do anything positive, I'm serving him because I'm making the decision to go with you. That's the kind of decision God wants us to make each and every day when it's time to walk out our purpose. And that time is every day. The moment you wake up, it's time to walk out your purpose. My favorite part, though, is the back end of verse 21. So it starts off by saying, I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. And then Naomi keeps talking. Why do you still call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me? It's funny how the whole town comes out, greets her full of joy because her name Naomi is all about joy. It's all about that. And that's who they know that she is. And she says, no, call me bitterness, call me Mara. And they just ignored her and kept calling her Naomi. And she had to come to that realization. Sometimes we need people in our lives who look at our situations, and while we look at it and we see bitterness and resentment and frustrations, they look at it and they just wipe that slate clean and say, nope, I see joy, I see peace, I see victory, I see overcoming. I'm grateful for people like that in my life. I'm grateful for the men and women who come to this group and we're able to pour into their lives each and every week. Friends, I just want to urge you, there's a decision to be made today. There's a decision to be made not only for salvation, where are you going at the end of your life, but there's the decision of how am I going to live today? What choices am I going to make today? What choices am I going to do that way for tomorrow? I don't have to look back on regret. I don't have to look back at the pain of indecision. I could be one step closer to accomplishing a goal. I could be one step closer to being sober. I could be one step closer to mending a relationship. But you're not going to get there without making a decision. You're not going to get there with indecision. You're not going to get there sitting on both sides of the fence. You got to make a decision. Jesus is very clear several times in the New Testament when he's speaking. He reminds us to make a decision. He reminds us that um, to not be hot or cold, not to be hot or cold, but not be lukewarm. I would rather you live fully in sin, running from me, because at least you've made a decision to run from me, not have one foot in the church and one foot in the world. I urge you guys to make a decision one way or another. I'm not here telling you you need to be a Bible thumper, and I'm definitely not telling you you need to be a prodigal. But what I am telling you is you make a decision today and allow God the opportunity to come through. We talk about it several times, the reference of just opening the door. Our job is not to fulfill the purpose. That's God's job. He gave it to us. He's the author. Okay. Our role to play is to open the door and give him the opportunity to walk it out. I'm grateful for you guys. Look forward to seeing you each and every Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30 live. If not, look forward to the Logos Mentality recaps right here. Grateful for you guys. Thank you. Viktor Frankl says, those who have a why to live can overcome almost any how. What's your why today? Because I guarantee you, you set that hook tight enough, deep enough, you're going to overcome whatever how is coming against you today. I'm for you guys. I'm rooting for you. Be well.